Here we go.
Okay, I'll call this meeting to order at 6:36, and the first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
liberty,
liberty and justice for all.
Let's see. Next up is agenda review. I don't have any amendments. I don't know if anyone else does. Seeing none, we can move on to correspondence, visitors, and public comments. I don't believe we have any public. And I don't have any correspondence, so we can move on to approval of our December 1st meeting minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Chris?
Don?
I have an addition. It's not a correction, but it's an addition I'd like to have the board consider. I took notes that night, so I'd like to have them consider that this wording: board members commended Wendy Cunningham and the ECP teachers for the implementation of the preschool academy and the remote classroom learning packets. I think a number of us, when she got done, said, great job, very good. That's nice, because it was very innovative, I thought. I mean, we have a lot of people do good work, but I thought that was quite an undertaking for those people. So if the board approved what I said, I'll get it to Pierrette to put in the minutes. If you don't approve it, then at least I said it.
How does everyone else feel? I see nods and thumbs up, and so, yep, we'll do that.
Okay, Pierrette, I'll talk with you tomorrow.
So once again, I'll entertain a motion to approve December 1st meeting minutes. Terry's the first. Don's the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the December 1st minutes as adjusted with Don's added statement, raise your hand. Abstentions? None? Okay, the motion carries 9-0. First up, for presentations, we have our multi-year plan.
Wonderful, thank you. I won't go through it in a ton of depth, but I wanted to make sure that I shared with the board some work that the admin team and I have been going through for the past 2 years. It came out of things we needed to tackle because of the merger, and then it really turned into a multi-year plan of administrative tasks that we either need to or want to tackle. So, and then the purpose really is for us to think of it as our work plan, and it keeps us sort of on track there, but also to report out to the board periodically about the kinds of tasks that the administrative team is engaged in doing, either together or as a collective. So I did put a draft in the drive that I will share. Hopefully the correct tab. So to give you a little context, when we were merging, there were some tasks that we needed to do immediately, and those actually went on an earlier version of this, and we just did them. Getting EIN numbers and new, DUNS numbers and all of those kinds of things that had to be done immediately. But then we moved into, how do we look at different sort of departments or areas of the district now that we've merged? What do we have to do that makes sense to streamline things? What things do we want to do? What do we perhaps envision discussing or looking at in perhaps 5 years out? I tried to make this it's an ongoing working document. I will go through a little of it and give you some examples of things. Obviously, we had COVID happen. There's always something, right? But a plan like this allows us to adjust. So in some areas, we had great intentions of doing a thing, but we're only just getting started now, that kind of thing. So it's very fluid. So I just wanted to preface that. First, the areas that we look at are human resources, finance, facilities, communication, technology, early childhood, roles and responsibilities between board, superintendent, and principals, equity considerations, both in terms of equity of services across schools, but then equity in terms of racial and LGBT needs of students. Then what we did, so those were sort of our administrative tasks, but we also had a multi-year plan that had to do with instruction and special education and social emotional learning curriculum. So we didn't want two plans. So we put them together. So we have some planning around core instructional initiatives, support services, social emotional learning, and that was our last one. So I don't want to make you dizzy by scrolling all the way up to the top, but an example of some of the things that we have completed already in terms of human resources, as you can see, I have a little key at the top of each page. What we have completed, we've established hiring processes and procedures now that we're a single district. We have a district-wide supervision evaluation process for teachers, and we have an initial we completed our initial negotiations. So those are some tasks that we did last year. In progress, we've started non-union guidelines. We have ongoing processes for an employee transfer. We need to do the co-curricular guidelines, but we haven't started those yet, but they're still in this column because we want to get to them. We want to get started. So that gives you an idea of what you're seeing here. If it's all right with you, I'm going to go through and sort of share some of the things that we've done and some of the things that we're working on right now. Terry?
Thank you. I just had a question. I'm sorry that I didn't follow it totally.
That's fair enough.
You guys came up with this from scratch, or did you say that just like the state has those continuous improvement plans, is this something the state gives you a template?
Thank you. No, this is something that we did ourselves. So this is not anything that goes anywhere except our admin team. And then I think it's important to report out to the board periodically about tasks that we have completed, things we're working on. One of the goals we have is to really make transparent the work of the administrative team. And one of the ways to do that is to share with you some of these things that we've done and things we are engaged in doing.
Thank you. I think it's great. I can't believe you guys are doing this, plus all the COVID and everything else. Thank you. It's great.
Well, I won't tell you that the principals love having these discussions in the middle of COVID. But I'm the kind of person who needs a plan, or I need things in front of me. So in terms of finance, obviously there were things we needed to do and we did them, but we're continuing to develop and communicate the MVSD budget and a process for managing and administrating a merged budget is sort of ongoing work that we just have to keep getting better at. In red here, you'll see switch to Power School. That's something that's in progress right now in the finance budget. These are very purposely broad categories. There's a lot that goes in each one of these comments. And it really, and forgive me if there's anything in here that makes no sense to you, because they really are for us to be able to say, don't forget, they're like placeholders for us to know about this work. So they're not intended to communicate the totality of what something is. But for example, the facilities, we had the multi-year maintenance plan for each school that happened last year. It's being improved upon this year. We have a building and grounds team that was established. We started a professional learning opportunity that facility directors joined last year that the Superintendent's Association created with our Vermont School Board Insurance Trust. However, because of the pandemic, it ended, but they are continuing to have professional learning for facility directors. It's been pretty important, particularly during this time. You know, we examined performance contracting, and now we're in the process of beginning that whole piece. Sharing custodial and maintenance subs, that has started this year. So a district communication plan was developed when we went into our COVID times. So you can get a sense, the designing and publishing and changing of the website, examining all of those tools that our schools use to communicate with families like Dojo and Seesaw, aligning those. In technology, a lot has happened and is continuing to happen. And you can see that sometimes things are in progress that we really didn't plan to tackle for a while, but they just happened to come up. So we've been addressing them. So sharing tech integration position across the schools. We were going to do that this year, but it didn't happen because of the hybrid model and the online learning happening at the middle high school. But it is planned for next year. We have a data manager. The tech department is involved in purchasing discussions. E911 compliance was a very big piece of work this past year. Robert and his team worked very hard to wire the schools and make sure that all of our phone systems were compliant. So this gives you an idea of the areas. This year we're working in technology on obviously some Google Classroom, and those over here, if you can see, because we had to go remote, some of these discussions about learning platforms online had to come up earlier than later. Tech integration needs, we have to work on having an ed tech committee, so it's not just technicians, but educators that are interested in technology. We need to get that started. We've had some initial conversations about that. Early childhood, as you know, they developed their remote pre-K program. They last year did PLPs. You often hear the principals talk about the professional learning PLCs. It should say PLCs, not PLPs. I'll fix that. But the pre-K didn't have their own PLCs. They just, they had other meetings, but now they've engaged in the same process as their kindergarten through 12th grade partners. So that happened last year. We are working, one of the things that's important to us is that we share more data that is collected in preschool with the incoming kindergarten so that kindergarten teachers have a better understanding of the readiness of those students that have come in from preschool. It's not going to eliminate kindergarten screening, but there's a lot more information that teachers can have. I don't know why there has traditionally been a wall up around preschool, but there just sort of is, and we're tearing down that wall a little bit. Not to sound like Ronald Reagan. Some other big pieces that I know the board will want to hear about. You know, last year we implemented the school choice policy. We had an equity literacy grant and training that happened at MVU, and some other schools were involved there. There are some other equity-based work that we're beginning. It's a very big piece of work, so we're picking away at starting to talk about what equity is. Using some templates that are out there to define it as a district and define what our commitment is to it. We'll bring that to the board in a future meeting. We're beginning the portrait of a graduate process that will really have a large student voice in it. So that's some of the ongoing work there. In terms of core instruction, you can see, we've been talking about some of these things like the Marzano work that's been happening, the training and coaching for the tool that we use to observe teachers, and also ongoing training about the Marzano framework is a part of that. The mind play literacy work, the math menu work, all of those things we've begun and are continuing. Incorporating social emotional learning into our supervision and evaluation process, that's happening this year. We're continuing to refine our MTSS systems. So again, in special education, there were a lot of things that have started, but some of it is very dependent upon students being present. So I know one of the largest things that we want to do is explore our alternative program continuum. So we're thinking about, we have a program at the high school, we have students that need to go out of district, we have students that have behavioral supports in elementary schools, but we want to do something for the middle school, for example, and we want to maybe expand some of our programs so that we can keep some of our students here in the district rather than sending them out. Those that are out, is there a place that they can come back to and transition back to the middle or high school? So those are things that we are looking at. So again, I will do more in the future, and I want you to just sort of get used to seeing this document and, several times a year. I hope to report out our progress. So are there any, I know we have a lot. So I remember a board meeting in another school district where somebody read every single bullet in a plan, and I don't want to do that to you. But are there any particular questions?
Julie, has COVID slowed down the process, or is it given you, because you meet together so much, an opportunity to talk about issues?
Well, yeah, it's a little of both. I mean, it's created a mandate for us to meet weekly, because there's always something that just is urgent that needs to be addressed. And that allows us as an admin team to then do some other pieces of work. Some weeks we have very little time to do other things, but other times we're able to examine a policy together or wordsmith something. People have been very patient with me because I'm really trying to not always have the urgency of what's in front of us block absolutely everything else away. In terms of the tasks in front of us, we have really tried to do what's essential and what needs to be done and not take on more. So having a plan like this really helps us say, oh, yeah, that we can do next year. This, I think we need to find time for this one. And we adjust, and we're going to make mistakes and take on too much, but I'd rather take on too much and then say, you know what, we need to back off a little than just not tackle things. But some things just happen. The E911 compliance just had to be done. The Power School transition and the whole chart of accounts work that's happening, and we didn't have a choice. We didn't get to say, oh, I'd rather do it in 3 years. They just told us. So it's a balance. It's a balance.
Terry.
Thank you. I just want to say I'm really impressed with you all. Like you said, the urgency can get in the way of the strategic. And it's nice to keep your eye on the prize, because I can just see when all this is over, you will have moved forward, because it's going to feel pretty if everything is gone in terms of how strategic you all have been. So kudos to you guys.
Thank you. My hope is that we will continue to add to it. I mean, the topics and the ideas all came out of our retreat, and the admin teams working together in small groups, brainstorming, and then refining. And It's not complete, it's not perfect, it's always going to be updated, added to, changed, but it was a great example of our administrators working together to sort of define the things that we need to do together.
Can I just say one more thing? It's also great inspiration to us because we're charged with thinking strategically. And if you all are doing that, it puts some impetus on us to be doing that as well. So thank you.
Not seeing any more hands raised, so thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll talk more about it in the future.
Absolutely. Okay, next up for presentations, we have our elementary administration updates. So I think we'll start with Yeshua.
All right. Hello, everybody. If you do hear craziness, I know I always say this, but my children are in particularly very wild tonight. I'm not sure what's going on. So kind of the few updates from Hvac. Since the beginning of the school, we've actually had 19 students enroll, which is a pretty big number for us, and only one unenrolled. In particular, 11 students in October, so it felt pretty busy in October. But we have a good system, I think, of how we're welcoming students to Hvac. We also have gotten some in-focus whiteboards or interactive whiteboards. We've gotten some for 3rd grade, 6th grade, and preschool, which is really cool because you can interact with them, pull up websites and write on them, and you also can cast from your computer. So a lot of teachers will have a Google slide presentation that they go through for all their lessons during the day. So that's been really, really nice to see. And of course, for my technology background, I'm giddy about that. A big, which probably is not surprising, is we've been really working to refine our motion. We have a very clear direction of what we're going to do as a school if we do have to go remote for any reason. And one feedback we got from spring was, those are some students that you just feel like you're constantly trying to catch, and teachers kind of feel overwhelmed with trying to constantly get a hold of families. So created what I've called an academic advisor position, which is made up of classroom teachers, and they're going to be assigned to a classroom so they can kind of support those students that might need a little extra support to help teachers with that. Our PLCs are moving along quite nicely, talking about data in both a math-focused one week and a PLC-focused the next week, breaking up a bit.
Are you frozen? Yeshua, you're frozen. A little bit. Can you hear us?
Looks like you're back, Yeshua. Start talking.
I'm nervous. I don't want to talk. Am I back now?
You are.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll try to say the PLC thing again. Sorry about that. PLCs, as I said, have been going great. We have 1 week as a math focus, 1 week as a literacy focus. We are talking a little bit more about improving or streamlining our literacy instruction in particular. With, I know some district work is happening as well, and then each school kind of has a literacy plan. So we've been talking about that. And I think in particular, what's really fun, our math coach, Kristen Hughes, always starts each math PLC with a problem. So an actual math problem that the teachers have to work through. And then we look at what strategies everybody chose, what answers they got to, and what the process was to actually solve the problem, which I thought is a really clever way of kind of acting like students as we dive into the data that they're about to look into. We are fixing a section of the roof in the white building coming up. I believe they're actually setting up this Friday and planning on doing that work this weekend. We're also doing a little bit of electrical work to our sewer pumps because we realize there's not quite enough voltage heading out to the pumps, so it's kind of dying them out a little bit. So we are working on that. And the last thing I had is we're really trying to do something holiday cheer-wise. Hvac used to do faculty follies, but obviously COVID-wise, we aren't quite able to do that. So we're trying to do, we're having a community gathering this week. So we were trying to make a video with some fun staff stuff. We're going to try to do an elf yourself, which is just a fun little, you put your face on an elf's body and they kind of dance around to different music. We're also going to do sing or perform, I guess. Do you want to build a snowman from Frozen? And everyone's going to kind of sing a section and you put it together and you have a compilation of the song. But we realize we're having students do it and they're going to be masked, so you can't actually see them singing along or so whatever, we're going to try it, but we realized that way after the fact. And the last thing we're going to do is we found a really cool idea on Twitter for Chris and I are making kind of little goodie baskets for staff for the holidays, and some include some like gift cards, you know, and we're going to hang up snowmen around the school. And so if you find a snowman with a corresponding number, you'll come and get your little goodie bag. But if you have a golden star, then that means you get kind of the special gift. So we're hoping, we saw that and thought that would be a really cool thing, which Kit actually brought to us. So that was exciting. So I think that's the stuff we have now. And of course, behavior, kids are getting really excited about the holiday break, and we're starting to certainly see a spike in behavior, but covering it well so far. And I think, Chris, unless you want to add anything, that is what I had on my list.
I do not want to add anything. That was a great summary. Thanks, Yeshua.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Yeshua. Any questions for Yeshua? Devin.
Thanks, Yeshua. I was just curious about the 11 new students. You know, is it just students coming back from the remote learning option? Are they just shifting within the district, or are these coming from outside of our district?
Yeah, it's actually been interesting. So we've had a total of 19 throughout since the beginning of the school year. A couple in district. I believe we had some Winooski, we had Williston, we have a couple from Canada. I'm trying to think. It's actually been kind of a variety of. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
I was saying Richford was another town.
Oh yes, Richford, Enosburg. That's the latest two
Enosburg.
kids we had. We only had, I think, 2 were home studied and then decided to come back. But it's been mostly, yeah, kids just coming in from around. So it's been great.
Nice, thanks.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for Yeshua? Seeing none, I think we'll move on to Joyce and Franklin.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I think I'm going to start with the not as good news. Not good news. So on Saturday, we had a parent inform us that her child was positive for COVID. And so we met with the health department on Saturday. We did all the necessary steps. I have to say, we really benefited from Taunton's experience and them sharing their experiences, and also Julie's experience. The health department was wonderful. And I just have to say, just our COVID response team at school, Alita, Sue, Kathy Ovett was remote. Everybody came together so quickly on a Saturday to work through everything. We got a hold of every family involved except for one on Saturday, and people were just amazing. Everybody was just so wonderful and understanding, and there was community spread. It was not transmission within our school. Just incredibly supportive. And Marshall and Colette Plouffe. Just really, I just can't say enough about how prepared everything Alita had done to be prepared for if and when we'd have a case. One thing I was especially happy about was that, and really want to highlight, is that teachers got together on Sunday, communicated on Sunday. They had already talked a lot about if we had to go remote. So because our 5th grade is remote until they test negative or quarantine for 14 days. And Sunday, the teachers got together, and special educators and math and literacy leaders, and communicated with parents, and instruction continued on Monday. I was really happy that they did it that quickly, and kids didn't have to miss a beat. Easier with an older group of kids. They were using Google Classroom from when they were doing hybrid, so they were able to jump right back into that. We did chart some new territory with our situation because it was the first time in the district that there was a bus rider. So that kind of added some wrinkles to it. And we did, as I said, worked with the bus company closely and the Department of Health and worked through that. And there were a few other students affected due to close contact on the bus that have to quarantine also. However, I have to say, I'm really, really happy that at school we had continued to keep our cohort separate all day because it was only 5th grade being affected at school. We keep them separate at recess still, at lunchtime, and so, and that's the point, so that, you don't have to, there was only that one grade affected. So Monday we met and we debriefed and went over everything that went well, things that, we tweak another time if we have another situation. But again, all came together with good teamwork and Julie's help, and again, reaching out to people that had already gone through this. So on to other things. For my report, I gave you out our school report information from last year. A lot of information there, truncated somewhat because of the dismissal of school in March, but a lot of information in that. I mentioned at the time I wrote the report, we were into week 4 of full-time in-person learning, so now we're in week 5. Everybody was just so happy having everybody back, and now we have this hiccup with 5th grade, but we are still it's so been wonderful to have everybody back in person. Staff and students continue to just be phenomenal in terms of flexibility, cooperation, getting used to the new routines with all the kids in the rooms. And I just want to say that our morning routine was really helped by getting the thermal scanners. When we were hybrid, it was one thing to have 14 people, on duty, taking temperatures and doing all of that and trying to get, kids out of cars as quickly as possible. But we start meetings at 7:30 in Franklin. We start services for kids before 8 o'clock, and having 14 people doing those things every morning, and with colder temperatures starting, having those thermal scanners, it is so incredibly fast and smooth kids into school. And we have been able to go from 14 people doing that to 4. And then once the buses have been there, to 2. So we're able to have our regular PLC meetings again, our educational support team meetings, getting kids reading and math services prior to 8 o'clock. So that's been wonderful. I talked about some reader theaters, some classes had been doing that will continue throughout the year. Those are always just so fun and so worthwhile. I did just have to mention, because I'm still on a high from this afternoon, I mentioned the food and drive for the Enosburg food shelf. And today was our last day. I had put in my report the picture after day 4. Well, 2 weeks, and just 2 weeks. Today we went over to the food shelf with over 16 overflowing boxes of food, incredibly heavy boxes of food. Usually the 6th graders go over with us, but due to COVID, they couldn't go over with us, but they helped us load everything. And all of that food, and in 2 weeks, we brought a check for $1,400. And I just think that is incredible. And just, it is overwhelming how generous people are at such a really difficult time for so many people right now. And that $1,400 will go, they say it goes like 3 times that far when they shop at the food bank. So, it came in quarters and, nickels and the paper money, and we had some incredibly generous donations too, from community. And anyway, and just so proud of everybody, and so hoping that can help a lot of families have a better holiday. We're also trying to do some things around, keeping everybody's spirits up. And to me, that was a great one today. When I got back, I had the sixth graders announce how much food it was, and it was a surprise to everybody that it was $1,400. So the whole school did a drum roll before the announcement. But we're having Festive Fridays, and so you wear whatever would make you merry. And Festive Fridays, and we were having 40 gingerbread men are lurking around the building somewhere. And we're really looking forward to having our virtual concert. Jen McConnell's been working really hard on that. And we're still hoping for that being available on Friday. If we haven't had the snow we thought we were going to have for the concert, to have that nice video with kids singing in the snow, but we're still looking forward to that. And today also was just, and I'm going to talk more about this at the next meeting, because I haven't had a chance to really get all the feedback yet. But today we had a day-long consultation with the Stern Center. So we set up a schedule for different teachers to meet with the consultants from the Stern Center around some kids that we have some concerns about their reading. And this was kind of a continuation of our mind play work from last year. And the little bit of feedback I was able to get this afternoon was that it was an incredible day of professional development mixed with data analysis and figuring out next steps for some kids that were kind of pulling our hair out about what do we do next to help them. And so it just a great thing today too. So lots of good things happening, and we'll just take it one day at a time as far as COVID goes. And as Julie was saying, I just feel like we have to keep our eye on all these other things and not get just consumed by what's happening with that. But I am lining up for the vaccine, and I will gladly take it publicly too, because I'm anxious to get everything back to normal as soon as we can. But anyway, and I just wanted, while I have a chance, just wish everybody happy holidays and hope everybody has a happy and healthy new year. So thank you and take care.
Thank you, Joyce. Any questions for Joyce? Seeing none, I'll also extend happy holidays back to you. Thank you very much. And that leaves Dina in Swanton.
Okay, just going to jump on what Joyce was talking about. We too jumped on with the scanners, and that has made a big difference. As Joyce said, it was pretty staff intensive, especially because we had 4 doorways to man. So as people started not being able to come to work, we were out of people. So we were really glad that we looked into that. And Joyce was really behind that too and getting us on board. So Yeshua, did you guys end up getting them too? I think. Yes, okay.
Actually, I can't believe I forgot to say that, but yes, they are incredible.
That's okay. And Jay Hartman saw ours on Saturday, so he might even look into that for the high school. I told him how good they were. So that's been totally good to start our mornings with that. In connection with that as well, I need to give a big thank you to Jay Hartman and Paul and Mike and Mark and Brandon, who spent 3 hours on Saturday morning at Swanton School cleaning for us. Giving up that time. Paul's crew to come down was awesome, and they I can't thank them enough. It was just really above and beyond, and I think that's the way we are within this district. Everybody kind of doing for one another, so it was just very, very much appreciated. My report was pretty bleak and little, and I apologize for that. I will say Julie has done a really, really good job when we're looking ahead to 5-year plans and stuff like that. Everything on that plan is what I really got into education for, to be a principal and to be a leader. And she keeps us going with that. And sadly, it feels like this year it hasn't been a focus for us. And it's not that we're not trying. And sometimes our principals do get a little edgy, because when we're in the middle of a breakout or don't have enough staff and she wants to talk about our 5-year plan, we all just kind of go for it, and we smile and we do it. But honestly, some days that's pretty hard when you're, back at the fort trying to to just cover your classrooms and so forth. But I think she's working really, really hard with that. Also, I don't know how she thinks about anything else because she has been involved with the health department and with her principals constantly. Chris, she's got you on speed dial. It's like every time I gotta let Chris know what's going on. So I just really appreciate her leadership. I will also comment, Justina, Danielle, and Wendy have been working incredibly hard to keep people safe and to communicate. The communication is really the hardest thing, and Julie's been great with that. We finally got all our desks back, and we were really excited about that. They came in, and Jason and Mike worked hard to get those there. Right now, as we are going remote, Deb Boucher and Jess Borbo as our coaches have been incredible. They have worked with the other coaches and under coach's direction. And I think all of our schools have a really good plan in case this happens. They have worked incredibly hard the last 2 days trying to get our teachers up and running. And I think we're going to be there. I think we're going to jump right in. Our families have been great already for these first 2 days. Most kids in our classrooms have joined our class meetings, and that's a really good thing. Our kids miss when they are not here in school. They really do. So we're off to a good start with that. I think too, just to remind people, Julie was so supportive as we were working through this decision. And I think the communication with our community, with our staff, with everyone, it's not like we had a ton of cases in our school, but as Julie has been telling us all the time, if we don't have enough people to run our school, then we have to do something. We had a grade level that was quarantined, and we didn't have enough subs for them to come in and do that. There was some other important pieces that were missing as well. So it was a really hard decision. I think a lot of our community members appreciated the decision. I think the board supported that, and we appreciate it. And I think our teachers really, really appreciated it. It's not just our building, and every building staff is really under a lot of pressure right now. A lot of them are afraid. A lot of them currently are awaiting test results. So those are the type of emotional things that we worry about as well. As far as education, I think our teachers have a really good plan with Deb and Jess's guidance to continue moving forward with our curriculum. It's not just review work, but it's new learning in the best way that we can do that. And our goal is to keep up with our other 2 elementary schools so that our kids, won't have huge gaps. They might only be huge, but special ed is on board. You should be very proud of your special educators, Tanya, and that leadership. So they feel really good about moving forward for our kids. Is it the best situation? No, but right now I think for our community and the safety involved, it's really important. I am so impressed, like hearing Yeshua talk about Christmas and all that stuff, because I know personally it's been really hard for me to do regular stuff right now, and I think for Justina, so that's been tough. It's not like we're not trying, but it is hard when some of those other things are like staring you right in the face. It was really hard when we made the decision on Thursday and it was dismissal time and nobody knew yet what we were going to do. And saying goodbye to those kids, knowing that we weren't going to see them for a while, that was really hard. Harder than last year when we didn't even have that closure. So we're going to do our best just to get them back. And they are really what we're there for. And that's it. It's not very educational, and I apologize for that. But we're gonna get back on track for sure.
Thank you, Dina. And I greatly appreciate, because like you said, Julie has kept me pretty in the loop and stuff, and I appreciate all the hard work, behind the scenes work that you've had to do through all this tough time. Any questions for Dina? I'm not seeing any, so that will conclude our elementary updates. Thank you very much. So now we can move on to new business, and first up for new business is the performance contracting debrief. We have some information and possible action. So we interviewed last week 3 companies that showed interest: EEI, Siemens, and Train. Each company we interviewed for almost an hour. There really wasn't a bad choice. They all were very competent and could definitely do the job. So not like it was a easy choice, because they're all very good. Through a lot of discussion, and we also had a tool that we used to score each company and whatnot. We've decided as a facilities task force to recommend EEI. It's a local-based company. They're based out of, I believe, New Hampshire is the headquarters, but they have a office in Vermont, I believe in Middlebury. They come highly recommended. Laura spent quite a bit of time this week checking on all the references and whatnot. There really wasn't anything negative at all. Feel like I'm leaving a lot out here. Like I said, the biggest thing is that's who we're recommending to move forward with. One of the big components that we felt made them stand out from the others is the aid in which they're going to help us with marketing, and the tone that they use to talk to us was much more on a level that was less of a salesmanship and more from information, which we feel is a better tone to give to our voters. Instead of trying to sell them on something, we can give them a lot more information. There's all the companies were more than willing to help us through the marketing process, but we liked EEI better in that aspect. And then all the other aspects, we felt they were very comparable to the other companies, from experience to they've actually done some performance contracting in Vermont. I believe Siemens had as well. Like I said, feel free to jump in, Pete or Donald.
I think Chris, you
have 2 windows open. That's why it's.
Oh yeah, I see you double, Don. It's like you're coming in from outer space.
Now they're both muted.
okay, is this better?
Yes, much better.
I don't know why I did, but I just, all of a sudden, it just dropped. It said stability and unstable and gone. I think, Chris, a really important part of it was the facilities directors all participated. There was a real good discussion, even though as I went into it, if it was you and Peter and I, and we needed to come up with a recommendation to the board as board members, but I thought that there were good questions. And when we got down to final analysis, I think everybody agreed, even though they may not have been anybody's individual first choice. They came around and all said, yes, they can do the job. So I want to be on record. And I think we all do is their help was really very valuable.
Agreed. Peter?
One of the big things that was a selling point for me was that they were willing to put it out on the line. Is they're not going to charge us where the other ones were for any engineering work they did to develop a plan. The plan that they develop, they bring it to us, and we say no, or we don't move ahead with it. We don't owe them anything. So that makes me think be pretty confident what they give us is going to be solid and something that we're going to want to move forward with. So that was a selling point for me.
Another big selling point for me, and this is with performance contracting in general, is instead of trying to take great big huge bites off of all the needs in our district and buildings, we can set this up into phases and kind of get the low hanging fruit right off, the easy ones, the ones that have instant savings, they're easy to do. And we can also kind of test the waters and see how this process works without, going for this huge bond that's most likely going to get voted down just because of the giant number attached to it. So we can break it down into much more manageable sizes projects and do it in phases. This is with performance contracting all in general, not just EEI, but EEI was already involved in multiple setups like that in Vermont. And like I said, the references were glowing. So, so at this time, if any questions from anybody, Devin.
So I think maybe Peter alluded to it, but did we present to them any of our needs or requests, or was this more of a general tell us what you do and then or tell us, they told us what they could do and then they'll come in and get specifics and find out what opportunities are there?
A little mix of both. They actually requested information from our buildings and grounds directors. Siemens has a little more information just because we've used them to learn about performance contracting, and I believe they've done a site visit before, whereas EEI and Train have not, but they did reach out, they did look into it. But at the end of the day, what we were looking for, this is to pick what company we want to move forward with. And then once we pick a company we want to move forward with, that's when they do a much more in-depth assessment of what our building needs are and where possible savings are and whatnot. The reason
Gotcha.
one of the reasons we kind of want to move this forward is because we do have bond money for Hvac that we can possibly use the money better with this assessment and whatnot. Maybe stretch it out a little farther.
Devin, I think one of the things that came out in our interviews was that these companies, including EEI, had some experience using subcontractors that we already use in the district. I know Paul mentioned a couple of the subs that pretty familiar with the school at MVU, who were on the list of subs for EEI. And I think the others had also indicated use of some subs that knew our facilities, which makes a big difference in my mind, that they're coming in and knowing some of the issues that exist.
Yeah, that could be a big advantage.
This was an RFQ, so it's a part of a very formal process. So this was a request for qualifications only. So basically what was supposed to happen is they bring to the table what it is that they have to offer, and then we move forward from there with very little risk. So we're not looking to award a contract right now, but rather move forward and have them investigate our buildings, and then they will come and kind of move into the next step, which would be we evaluate and see if we want to move forward after that. Right now, there's no agreement to sign, just an award of the RFQ.
So unless there's any other questions, I would entertain a motion to move forward with EEI.
If Peter wants to make the motion, I'll second it.
I'll make the motion.
Peter's a first, Don's a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of moving forward with EEI for performance contracting, signify by raising your hand. Motion carries 9-0. Thank you, everyone. Okay, next up on new business is our Copier Agreement.
Okay, so some of you might be familiar with SPC. It's a third-party administrator that we have for all of our copier machines, copier contracts, and supply and maintenance, which is a pretty big cost for the school district. What they do is solicit bids on our behalf along with many other schools in New England, and therefore attract a better rate and more attention to service and those types of things, and lower costs on maintenance on our behalf. We potentially have one more year in our existing contract, but oftentimes with the increase in technology and changes in the economy, they'll come to us early and see if we want to engage in a new 5-year contract earlier than the expiration date of the current contract. Robert Jarvis and myself have met with them several times and put it off, I would say, as long as we could because of all the COVID issues happening, and really not looking to overwhelm and have a conversation about copiers during a time that is really not convenient for our administrators. But there is potential for savings to engage in a contract early with SPC at very little risk. So right now I'm looking to see if the board would consider allowing us to at least engage in the bid process a year early, and at least kind of test the waters and gather the information and see what the rates would be. They're projecting a potential saving over the course of the next 5 years of about $60,000 to $65,000, which is significant, with very little impact to the schools. So I'm just looking to get the board's approval to potentially engage in that process now. What that would mean is we would engage in a contract, a new 5-year contract, but we could put, with the potential to put that off one more year. So we wouldn't have to actually execute the new copiers and the new service agreement now, but we would have to say that we would promise to do that next year if we chose not to participate now for whatever reason. Got a long-term relationship with SPC, and the contract is the same standard contract that we've had over the years.
Peter.
Just to understand what the contract is it just an agreement to maintain the copiers, or is it get us new copiers, or how does that work?
It's really so it is new copiers and equipment, it is new maintenance costs, but they also provide us with a lot of analysis and data about usage. They'll work with us to evaluate what new machines are needed, what the usages have been, is there potential to eliminate some machines, gain some machines, switch from black and white to color. So they really provide kind of an all-encompassing service on our behalf in our building. But yes, it's all of that.
What's the status? What's the status of the copiers right now? Do we have different age copiers in each school, or are they all on one?
All different ages. They primarily 2 different companies, Canon and HP, but all serviced through the same company, which is Canon. But the cost per page is actually less on the newer units, and the newer units are actually costing less, if that makes sense. And their buying capabilities and their rates that they're receiving are actually lower than they have been historically. So it's kind of partially due to COVID, but for lots of other reasons, increases in technology and things like that. So yes, new machines, but actually at less of a cost, and the printing cost actually reduces significantly as well. Or the potential is there. We haven't seen the data yet, just this is what they're telling us.
Do you have any idea how many copiers we have?
Off the top of my head, over 100, quite a few. We are working very hard to have less, to make, not to make teachers' lives more difficult, but to make sure that we're getting the best cost per copy and people are using the right machines at the right time and only using color when they need. So Robert and I push pretty hard, and I think principals do too. A lot. There's a lot. I can give you the full report. It's
I was just looking for a ballpark.
Steve, I saw your hand up.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, sorry. Laura, you and I have talked about this before. Have we gone out to bid or, checking other companies? Is my first question. My second question is toner involved in the contract? The contracts I have, toner is free. Maintenance is also covered under the contract. So are we including all of that in the agreements, or?
So the maintenance is a separate rate, but then we pay per page, and that includes the toner. So they have a page count on the machines, and that's monitored by both the machine vendor as well as SPC. They reconcile, and then we're billed that way. So yes, we're paying for toner, but on a per page basis, if that makes sense. Have we gone out to bid? No. To my knowledge, SPC is if you're going to engage in a third-party administration contract for your copier and maintenance, SPC is the company you would do that with in New England. They don't have a lot of competition. They do, I would say, over 75 to 80% of the school districts in New England, and it's growing. They started in Maine, but they continue to grow. If we went to bid on our own, I'd be happy to do that. Their markup is 11%. It's been 11% since I've been in it with the school district. I don't believe we can do better on our own because we just don't have the volume. You know, they're requesting $40 million worth of copier maintenance and equipment, and we would be, you know, under $1 million on our own. So.
And I understand it's a very big expense. I understand that, but with this agreement and you order your toner and they deliver it or whatever, and the maintenance is on top of the lease too. But yeah, I'm working with Kyocera right now, so they're working for me. But I don't know. I'm comfortable if you are.
I'm happy to look into other potential third-party companies if you have some information that you'd like to share. This is the company that I'm familiar with that is primarily used by school districts, and I think they treat us fairly. And option of saving money is not a bad thing. I'm happy to look at it.
Purette.
Yeah, if I could help Laura out a little bit here. You know, of course, Becky used to bid out the copiers and bring you some historical value. And once we started engaging with SPC, we just couldn't even come close to what they could do. We did it on our own, and we compared it to them, and it was just far and beyond much cheaper. So I hear what you're saying, Steve, but I just don't believe we could do better. And actually, it's every year it goes down in price, and that doesn't happen very often. So that's a pretty good deal every year. But every time we go out to bid with them, we actually pay less. So that's a pretty good deal.
So Laura, you need a motion to allow you to engage in bidding, or just to move forward?
Allowing MVSD to participate in their upcoming bid process, which would be a year early, or a year before our contract actually expires.
So I'd entertain a motion to allow MVSD to pursue bidding a year ahead of schedule. Jen's the first, Devin's the second. Any discussion? Peter?
So, you said something about being involved or bidding a year early, but we still wouldn't have to be in the new contract for another year. I guess I just didn't understand that quite.
Well, so basically less risk right now for us. If we decide, I've basically told them I will not disrupt the schools any more than necessary, given the status of everything for principals right now. So if they come in and the savings is not significant enough, or say we don't like the bids, or they can't arrange to swap out equipment on our time frame, or for whatever reason, we would not have to move forward this summer with new equipment and participating in that bid. Those bids would be locked in, and we could do it next year if that was better for us. But it at least allows us to have information.
Any other questions? Steve?
Yes. Yeah, one more question, Laura. I'm sorry. 5 years. That's a long time. Are we good with 5?
I am. We have a long-term, again, and not that that's everything, but I have a long-term relationship with this company. I'm not afraid to pick up the phone if something's not going right. I think our schools probably feel the same way. I
Okay.
feel like they treat it
Okay.
fairly and they resolve issues. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Are we ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor of moving forward with MVSD bidding a year ahead on copier agreements, raise your hand. Motion carries 8-0 because I believe Don lost his connection. So at this time, our next item on new business is town meeting elections.
You want to start that, Julie, or do you?
You're
mute.
muted.
Thank you. You'd think we'd get used to this. We really wanted to talk through what town meeting elections are going to look like. Peter, I didn't know if you had an update about Australian ballot, if we'd had, any conversations about, do we know if people will get ballots mailed? Laura, if I'm forgetting a part of this question, we just wanted to have a discussion about this because we are reaching out to the town clerks to find out what the latest information is. But in terms of our timelines, how we vote in March affects how quickly we need to have everything all set. Laura, am I missing a piece about this topic?
I think Peter wants to talk. I'll go after him.
Well, I was just going to answer Julie's question. So as far as the town of Franklin, we have approved to go Australian ballot. So we will be doing that, and the vote will take place in the town hall. So we will be letting voters know that it won't be at the school like it normally is. As far as mailing out the ballots, we haven't got that. We've definitely discussed it. We will be definitely mailing out information about the articles, but we haven't made a decision if all of the ballots. We're kind of waiting to see what the legislature does when they get back in session in January. So, but that is definitely going to be Australian ballot, and we'll have to move with those dates.
I've reached out to.
I can speak a little bit towards Hvac because they've sent us an email and whatnot, and almost identical to what Franklin is doing. They've approved Australian ballot. Their voting, instead of being at the school, will be at the lobby at the Highgate Arena. And as far as the mail-out ballots, I believe they're doing the same thing. They're waiting till the legislature gets back in session.
That's my understanding from talking to Wendy and the other town clerks as well. I've been working with communicating with our ballot printing company to see what our drop dead deadline would be as far as getting them the information. By statute, they have to be printed by the 1st of February. Our printers are saying it's about 10 days. And so I'm kind of working backwards to try to figure that out. So we will need to finalize in January, obviously, as usual, but I have costs. It costs a little more to get mailed perforated ballots that are, you're able to mail than typical ballots, but perhaps we order all perforated and just spend the extra couple pennies just in case. We're being told from the AOE that this is on the docket for the, right off in the legislature, but as well as I do, that doesn't mean they're going to come to a decision right off. So if we push the second week of January or past that, we may run into problems. So we'll have those discussions, but any information you get, if you can pass it along. I am communicating with town clerks as well, but I welcome any feedback. I've shared with Julie that I'm pretty anxious about how COVID's going to impact our timeline here through March. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know superintendents were given a survey to give input to the legislature because they are going to tackle this right off, and just saying, you know, what would be the implications, and would it be better or not better if they were able to mail them out to everyone the way we did in the general election. You know, more people voting is always good. However, the timeline would be pretty, you know, pretty tight. And the worry would be that the legislature would debate for so long that then it would become past the timeline to be ready. I did hear one rumor that the legislature is thinking about moving town meeting, but I don't know if that'll have any legs.
They were going to, I heard that at my VASBO meeting, that they're supposed to be discussing the potential to allow towns to do that without prior approval, you know, by the voters the previous year. So not sure how that'll end up either, but.
Yeah, Chris, they're calling it Act 162, and we got postcards in the mail today about the voting and how it's all supposed to go down. And you're right about the arena. To file a petition, it has to be in by the 14th of January. And candidates by the 25th. Meeting day articles will be held Monday, February 22 at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom. That's Hvac.
Pierre, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, so, and then additionally on this, so the reason that we put this on here is to just confirm at the last meeting, we talked about board members who were up for election. And I communicated with the Secretary of State's office, and they did say that they do not have to complete a petition, but all they have to do is complete a consent of candidate form. And so I did send that out to the 3 board members whose term is expiring. And it is a January 25th deadline on that, which I believe is what Steve just said, to submit your consent of candidate form. But I also am putting it out there in case other people in the community would like to run, you know, for school board, they can contact our office to get a consent of candidate form. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Pierre.
I was looking for that information during the last part of this conversation, so I'm appreciative of Corette remembering it off the top of her head. Yeah, we want to make sure that all of our community members have an opportunity to get a consent form, consent of candidacy form, should they be interested in running, because you all show off how much fun and how easy it is to serve your community as a school board member, and we appreciate each and all every one of you.
So Chris?
Don.
Yeah, I can't get back on. It keeps kicking me off and asking for a code word from my Comcast, so I am on the phone. Just got back on.
Okay, thank you, Don.
Is everybody who's currently on the board running for re-election, who's up for re-election?
No.
Okay. Is it Jen for Hvac?
No, it's Megan. I'm not running.
Oh, Megan, you're not running in Swanton. Oh, wow.
Okay. Megan, I didn't realize that. We will
hard decision, but I got a lot going on right now, so it's just not a good time, unfortunately. But if things change, hopefully I will be back.
Yeah, we will miss you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
And then I believe it's Devin's position in Franklin and Jen's position in Hvac. That's, or no, yeah, position that's up for election.
Yeah, I'll likely be running, but not 100% yet, but most likely.
Would it help if I called your wife and told her we needed you?
I don't know, Don.
I can say that with a straight face since I'm not on the monitor.
Okay. I believe we're all set on town meeting elections, unless anybody else has another question or comment. Seeing none, we can move on. Now we're going to move on to old business, and it's the FY22 budget draft 4.
Okay, we're on draft 4. Time's going by really quickly. I actually misspoke earlier, so it's actually February 10th is the statutory deadline to have the ballots prepared, and so 10 days for printing. So end of January, we have to have a finalized figure and tax rate and all of that to go to the voters with, or to go to print with. So I do feel like we have time to finalize January 5th and the 19th this budget. So we still do have a little bit of time, but most of the work on our end, as far as preparing proposals, has been completed. In this last draft, a couple things to point out is we now have all the requested and approved salary schedule movements for professional staff on the salary schedule. Projected, there's about 15 staff members that have either been approved or applied to do that. One thing that is absolutely driving me crazy, and Julie's listened to me talk about this twice today, is a couple of years ago, the AOE or the state required us to contribute to the Vermont State Teachers Retirement System healthcare contribution. And that line has now grown to, those lines, mostly under instructional, but a few other areas, has grown to over $90,000. And that will continue to grow. So that's that almost $1,400 that we pay on any new teacher to teacher retirement, and that will just continue to grow. We turn over and we have a lot of new staff, and we will potentially pay on those forever. That's on top of the 19% that we pay for teacher retirement on any grant-funded positions, and we have quite a few of those. So that money is sent to us and then taken out of our grant proceeds. And I don't have that figure with me, but it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I'm sorry that I'm sharing my personal opinion about this subsidy, but it is a $90,000 line in your budget that is not discretionary. We also have worked on MVU department budget requests. Thank you to the MVU administration working so hard with their staff on those. They've been reviewed by the principals, and we've applied those in this draft. We're working on a little fine tuning, but worked with the athletic director. I'm working with Paul, their tech team, everybody, and all their department leaders have been wonderful in working on those. So, and honestly, they're down slightly in the requests overall. So that's great work there. Technology budgets, we've been working hard on those the last week or so, working with the tech leads and Robert on technology needs. A lot of them have been applied in this budget, but not all. We still have some discussions to have at this admin meeting on our admin meeting tomorrow morning, Wednesday. Dental rates are now have been announced to be flat. I couldn't remember if I mentioned that last month, so I put that in here. We had like a 2% increase, and now that will be flat again this year for us, so that's great. So we removed those increases, and then we just continue to review and make shifts and adjust as necessary. Bills come in, or we just have other conversations, and we just keep scrutinizing, try to accommodate that new chart of accounts. So little small movement, not new additions or changes or deletions, but just movement to try to make sure we're coding things properly. So we are still under 2% on this budget draft, 193. I think we were at 196 before. I don't see a lot of additional increases being proposed or reductions. I think we're getting close to the board just being able to consider those and make their adjustments.
Laura, may I interrupt you just a minute?
Sure.
Okay, I'm looking at draft 3 because I got a paper copy in front of me. Was the facility information added to draft 4?
A lot of it has been. I've reviewed all the historical information. I've adjusted what I can based on the elementary school facility plans, historical utility information. We've increased the capital improvement, capital project line based on all the requests that they have. I have yet to meet with Paul. He's actively working on his. It's a much larger budget, and he was ill for a little while there. So that would be the last. So a little fine tuning, I would say, but for the most part, yeah.
Okay.
Pretty close to what we expect.
Okay. Keep going because I do have some other questions, but that was one when I flipped my page. Go ahead.
Well, that's all I have to say in regards to expenditures. I was going to move on to kind of just a brief kind of overview of the state stuff, some revenues and tax rate.
Okay. I was looking at guidance services for an instance. I'm looking at our current budget of $634,000 we budgeted, and we're going to only spend $555,000. Was that because we eliminated a position or hired a lot of new people? And then we're going.
You're looking at just salaries, Don?
I'm just looking at salaries, yes.
We had an unfilled guidance position.
Okay. Well, you probably Jay told us about that before, but I just looked at that and then it showed that we were holding there. So is it intentional that we're down a guidance position going forward in the district?
I don't believe it's intentional. We are looking to fill that position.
Okay.
So there's 0.6 in Franklin, and that it does reflect. No, that's the difference. Sorry, 0.6 in Franklin. We have 1 in Highgate. We have 2.8 in Swanton, and then MVU has 5 guidance positions.
Right. I guess the numbers. I don't know if they concern me, but if we had 634 and we didn't fill a position, we were at 555, and then it looks like this year we're putting in 580. Does that allow us to rebuild to the level we want to be? I guess that was my question.
I believe it does, but I'll review that line, Don, just to make sure.
Just don't want to shortchange us if for some reason, we didn't fill it or couldn't fill it. If we're going to at some point, I just want to make sure we have the money to do it. Okay, thank you.
You have more questions, Don?
Psychologists, we are no longer taking the majority of the money out of Idea B.
We are, 95% comes out of Idea B.
Okay, all right.
So the local share is at the top in the, it's separated by function now, or a fund now, I'm sorry. And then, so the Idea B portion of those would be in the back pages under the Idea B and grant section.
Right. So that, I think back 2 meetings ago, we talked about Franklin, and did they get an increase in psychologist time? Is that what Joyce was asking for? Or did she not have any service at all?
I did not budget for an increase.
Okay, so it stayed the same. Okay, all right.
Don, I think Joyce had asked about, I think the request was a nurse was the increase.
Okay, well, I thought my little notes said there were 3 or 4 different things: music, nurse, and stuff. Anyway, that's okay.
And
I'm just going through.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you,
Don,
Devin.
it was 2 days for nurse. It was a 1 day for music and 1 day for art. So it was a 0.8. It wasn't several different positions. It was just that 4 days, so 0.8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't realize they were all part-time, but for some reason I thought psychologist was in that mix, but no. Okay. All right.
I would love that, but.
Okay. No, I just looked at my notes tonight before I came to the meeting, and then I lost my screen, which is probably fine. But no, I just want to make sure what stays in, what needs to be there to run a good school. Interesting in the music, if Joyce or whoever was there, I see the music teacher also works in Fletcher, right?
This year she is working in Fletcher, correct?
So does that mean she will be what, 4 days a week now in Franklin when we go forward?
She's not going to continue. Right. She's not going to be continuing in Fletcher. She is not going to continue in Fletcher, Dawn.
Okay. So how many days will we have her next year?
4. No, you're right. 4.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. All right. I'm going to let you go forward. If I have any other questions, I'll catch you at the office. But I think I pretty much understand what's in here and what's not, because I know we've had a lot of people pop things and not, ask, and we just need to make sure we address it. All right. Good.
Mm-hmm.
So facilities, you still have work to do then. All right.
Fine tuning, yep.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Sure. And so does anybody else have any expenditure questions before I kind of move into the other pieces of the tax rate? No? Okay. So I just wanted to mention that we've primarily been focused on expenditure budget to date. I did have a professional meeting with the AOE and some other stakeholders on Friday. It appears that equalized pupil information is going to be delayed again this year. That's one of your factors in your tax rate. That's going to be, they did freeze the ADM due to COVID, so the impact to equalized pupils should be minimal. Our ADM probably, they will be using 19 and 20 instead of 18 and 19, and so I'm projecting a small decrease, but not anything significant. But apparently there's some information at this issues with the information on the ADM data that the AOE has, and until they get those reconciled or corrected, then we don't get our equalized pupil numbers. So waiting on that, but it seems they're going to miss the statutory deadline. Overall, in looking at even though we don't have a finalized audit, I'm confident that we've been efficient and effective, and we are projecting a pretty good carryover coming from fiscal year 19, and hopefully a decent carryover coming out of this year as well, since we've been very responsible and basically stopped spending on anything that was discretionary due to COVID, and just really have been monitoring the budget pretty closely. That will help us moving forward, and having a larger carryover than we had from fiscal year 18 coming into, fiscal year 19 coming into 21 will help us on the revenue side. Also funding some of those proposed positions at MVU, the PLC teaching position and the intervention position, if those are approved with title funding, also increases our revenue sources for those positions, so offsets those costs. The impact of the yield that they have announced in the commissioner's letter, the decrease of about $250 has a 3-cent negative impact to the tax rate. If we just look at that solely on its own, it's larger for some districts overall, but I guess what I want to say is I feel pretty confident about, even with an almost 2% increase to the expenditure budget, that given our carryover and the increase in the grant funding, that and our equalized pupils remaining fairly calm, that we will come out okay with the tax rate. It's tough to have great numbers. Julie asked me to project some numbers this week for the Vermont Superintendents Association, and we did that, but they're projections and estimates only until we have more information. But the tax rate impact is not looking horrible right now. So I think we're in a much better position than some of the school districts that were in the call or the meeting that I was in on Friday, that are not projecting carryovers for the last couple of years, and and they didn't freeze spending, and now they're in trouble. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to put that out there. We'll be working on that. I'm on it. I'm getting any information that I can. Julie and I are talking about it, but it could be looking a lot worse right now as far as tax rate projection, even with a 2% increase to the expenditure budget right now.
Yeah, I know the legislature has a lot of work to do to adjust the yield, to make decisions about the funding of the ed fund and our reserves and what level those reserves get funded. I appreciate Mike McCarthy's letter to the editor of the Messenger that really said, that was acknowledging the shock value of the tax commissioner's letter and, the headlines that generated, and saying, we have work to do in the General Assembly to address that. So I know they'll have their work cut out. There are a lot of holes to fill, but I would expect that they will do their best to ensure that the tax rate for Vermonters is reasonable. And honestly, we have conversations in our regions about how budgets are looking and how, nobody has adopted a budget in any of our towns or communities in Champlain Valley or anywhere in the state. But, just looking at how things are falling, we're in very good shape compared to other districts across the state that maybe didn't have a carryover, as Laura mentioned, or they are right up above. I mean, there are some school districts that are in trouble because they're always right at that excess spending threshold because of their equalized pupil counts. And those districts are always hurting. But my hope is that boards across the state are working like you are and like our administrative team and business office are to have very responsible budgets, because that's what's going to help us manage through this crisis, and the ed fund will be not stretched quite so thin.
Devin.
So Julie, you mentioned the state tax commissioner's letter, and I think probably it'd be worthwhile to bring it up in this forum for folks who watched the meeting if they haven't read that letter. The prediction was a 9% rise in education taxes. So as we do our budget, we have the 1.9% increase rate now, which is obviously well below the 9, but as Laura mentioned, there's a lot of variables controlled by the state that we don't know what they're going to be yet, and we don't know what the impact's going to be to the tax rate. So as we get more information from them and look at future drafts, to me that 9% number obviously it's kind of the benchmark right now, but it's also extremely high and not really acceptable. So I think we all just kind of need to be prepared over the next month to react as we may need to. Try to do our part and keep that low for the folks in our district.
Yeah, Julie and I have talked about that. It's going to become fast and furious in January for sure. As all that information comes out, we may have a few days or minutes to kind of react to it, unfortunately, to meet our printing deadline. But I'm sure we'll do
Laura,
it.
I'm sure you did this while I was in between TV and computer and phone call. What was the date? Heard you give a date in February. What's the date you have to have everything to go to your print shop that you do?
February 10th, they actually have to be printed in the town clerk's hands. So it takes about 10 days for the printers to do that. But she did tell me that with everyone potentially moving to Australian ballot, that's going to increase the demand also.
So we really have the month of January to work on this budget if it needs work, and it will need work.
Yeah, our second meeting is the 19th, I believe. I'm hoping we can finalize by then to give us time to prepare everything we need to.
Yeah, I don't know. We're still early in the process, but I'm betting the 19th of January we're still going to have work to do. But I hope I'm wrong. I wouldn't advise anybody to go to Caribbean the third week of January.
Considering we're not supposed to travel, that's a very good advice.
No, it's just that
Don, you can still get on via Zoom. You should be all set.
It just seems like there's a lot of crunch time in there. And I did ask Julie to re-invite me. I now think I can get back on if I get a new invitation. The other one isn't working.
All right, I'll do that. I'm obviously not on my email right now, so let me.
Okay. All right.
I'll go ahead. No worries.
Actually, I kind of like using the phone. I can drink a cup of tea and not worry about being seen on.
One thing just to point out in the commissioner's letter as well, I mean, there's a lot of things, obviously, so I hope people do read it. But the average equalized pupil per pupil spending for the current year and what it ended up actually being was 16,975. They're projecting fiscal year 22 on based on the information they had with this letter to be 17,612. Our tax rate, I'm sorry, our spending per equalized pupil for the current year is 15,626. And right now in this draft, and this is going to change, but just to give you some idea, it's actually going down to 14,588 in this draft right now. That's not to say it will stay that way, but I'm just trying to give you kind of, you know, a lens.
Any other questions pertaining to draft 4? Jay?
Chris, if I may, Laura, could you give me that figure again for the projected state average for FY22?
Yeah. 17,612. That's over this year, which is 16,975. It's a rate of growth of 3.75% on average for spending that they're utilizing. They actually have the equalized pupil numbers going up slightly from 87,304 to 87,332, which is good news.
Terry?
Thank you. I had a question. Are we underspending? I mean, when you think about that, and are we missing something? I don't want us to miss something.
Are we under budgeting or underspending?
Both. But I really meant underspending. I mean, when you gave those per pupil costs, I was kind of shocked that ours is going down, everybody else's is going up. We were already low. I just want to make sure we're not trying to be so cautious about saving money that we're not getting the resources we need.
That's a really good question, and I'll let Laura respond. But before I do, because she talks about this all the time, we have done an awful lot of work and Laura's office has done a great deal of work examining spending across multiple years. Some of it is savings, and we're becoming more efficient. Some of it is shifting into places such as facilities and capital improvements so that we can take care of our buildings and we can provide some equity there. So we're having very close conversations with, you know, where is this money actually spent? What do you really need? Making sure that we're talking to principals consistently about what is a need and making sure those needs are met, because we want to have efficiencies. We did a lot of work last year. MVU, all the schools, they did a lot of heavy lifting with reducing positions that hadn't been filled for a few years. Again, this budget, within this just under 2% expenditure increase, we're removing some positions, we're adding some positions. So, you know, but we're trying to use grant revenues to offset those costs as we're trying to create new positions that will be doing different work than we've had before, like the personal learning teacher position. So, you know, Highgate is a good example of, with student numbers, we've reduced a teaching position there. But we're adding some FTEs in a place where we don't have enough service. So, you know, I like to think that we are doing a good job of balancing efficiency with making sure that everybody has what they need.
I trust you. I just know sometimes we get we get so much of a culture of scarcity that we sometimes think, oh, wait, we've got to do this. We've got to do this. And, you know, and I don't want us to be penalized because other people are smart throughout the state, and yet they're finding that they need so much per pupil. And I'm just wondering what doing that we're not, or what they're, I mean, obviously we're fantastic and you guys are better than anyone else at finding efficiencies, etc. But what else is going on here? Because they're smart too, and there's something, they may be missing a couple things, but you know, $2,000 almost is a pretty big difference.
We are lucky, I think, in that our equalized pupil numbers have not dropped the way that some have. Swanton keeps increasing. That's absorbed some of the reductions in Highgate. Now Highgate has some people moving in just this year, you know, right now. So, but there are some school districts that it has been a huge equalized pupil drop. And then their CLA is impacting that further. So, I mean, you know, deferred maintenance on their buildings is catching up with them. There's, I mean, lots of issues. I try to ask the administrators when I talk to them, you know, do you feel people are going without? Do you feel like teachers have what they need? I think, Julie, you know, I think we've had that conversation, and I hope they feel free to talk, but, you know, are we pushing too hard with some things? And I don't believe that is the case. I think that they feel supported, but that's from my conversations with them. But there's a lot of things, and that's just speaking to what Devin said, there's a lot of things that impact this. We have been very conservative. I am extremely concerned about the long-term impact of this COVID situation on an already problematic ed fund and funding model in general. And I think there isn't a business manager in this state that doesn't have that concern. You know, this, and I'm not trying to be, you know, oh, woe is me, the sky is falling and kind of, you know, the big headlines in the paper, but you know, there's a $58 million deficit in the ed fund that is not being addressed when they set this yield. It's going to have to be handled at some point, and they don't know if that money is going to come from the federal government to help necessarily. So, you know, I think we're all working hard as an admin team to position ourselves really well for the long haul here. You know, looking at our carryover, only spending on what's necessary, making sure we budget for what we need, but, you know, really ridiculing. So.
Well, that's great and very, very great. I mean, that's great. I just had to ask because I wasn't sure. So thank you.
I'm not seeing any more hands raised, so thank you, Laura. And I guess we're moving on to draft 5. So we're done with old business, and now we're on to other business. First up is the facilities task force, which there's really not a whole lot to update. We've pretty much already taken our turn. As Yeshua said, the white building roof is getting done this weekend. I give them credit. It's really cold out now, and that's not going to be much fun.
Chris, I wondered, you know, we talked about this a month ago. Was it the problem in getting materials that they couldn't do it when we had those nice weekends? Because I remember we really felt we were under the gun to make a decision. And, hopefully we'll get it done this weekend, but I think.
I'm not sure, Don. I haven't talked to Scott.
I know from talking to Scott, it was a matter of just getting everything lined up, getting the supplies, yes, but getting the contractor lined up and on site and just all the pieces to come together. I think he worked hard to make it happen as quickly as he could. There were some septic issues and some other things. Scott's had his plate pretty full. Unfortunately, had a couple things pop up there also.
No, I'm not criticizing him. I just thought the way we talked that night when we were trying to push this through, that the contractor was available and ready to go, but apparently it wasn't quite that easy.
Yeah, I can answer a little bit to that, Don, since I've been talking to Scott quite a bit about it. It definitely, like Laura said, it's about lining up, you know, for the actual contractor, but they also were trying to limit actually during the week so that, you know, since students are there and, you know, staff.
Yeah, no, I think that was an original proposal, said weekends, right?
Yeah, so I think this just happened to be the one that, you know, finally fit. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Well, I hope they get it done well, but I feel badly for them, but I guess I shouldn't worry about it. It's just it'll get done.
Truth be told, too, I've been watching the weather because I live and die by the weather for my career, and the weekend weather has been terrible pretty much since those meetings. We've had great weather during the week, terrible weekend weather. or at least the predictions for the weekends almost every
Yeah,
weekend.
the predictions were bad, but some of the weather was good. But that's okay. You answered my question.
Okay, and then from the rest of the buildings and stuff, it's pretty quiet. We did obviously talk a lot about the performance contracting, and that's taken up a fair amount of our time at this point. Now that we're moving on from that, I'm sure there'll be a lot more in-depth look into each individual building and what they need and what we're going to do moving forward. I don't know if Peter or Don have anything to add, but that's all I have.
I thought the performance contracting went well.
Agreed.
Talking about the white building, I think that's going to be one of our goals as a task force and as a board, as what's the future of that building, and you know, how are we going to, because it sounds like it needs a lot of funding to get it to where it needs to be, and whether that's the right direction to go. So I think that's what we're going to be looking at.
Just to kind of add on to that, Peter, the Tyler Mumley from Ruggiano Engineering that we reached out to kind of provide us with options on the white building and kind of what kind of minimal improvements would be necessary and those types of things. He did reach out to me again and apologize that he hasn't followed up. He's slammed. He's on his docket for next week, so he hasn't forgotten about us. So hopefully he'll be moving forward with that next week also on the white building. Chris, if I could just mention something, facility directors are working really, really hard on meeting the deadlines on the CRF HVAC air quality funds that we received. So it's slightly over $300,000 that we were awarded. But unfortunately, we're awarded, all the school districts in the state are concerned because they awarded the funds and they gave us the funds in a timeline that doesn't really work. And so getting items to be on site and installed and invoiced and paid for before December 30, when you just had an award last week, is near impossible. So I have been pushing really hard on the facility directors to get invoices, work with their vendors, email every day, get it in writing, push as hard as you can, call them, squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of a thing. But that $300,000 is not guaranteed. It's only guaranteed if we are able to actually receive those items on site and have the portions that need to be installed by December 30. So just to acknowledge the work that they're doing there. And you know, the potential is there for the funding, and we're doing everything we can to make sure that we get what we can. But
Laura, is that a state deadline or a federal deadline?
It's a federal deadline that the state is enforcing. We have until the end of January to actually be invoiced. Submit for reimbursement through Efficiency Vermont, but everything has to be done by December 30 and received. So doing everything we can, but it's difficult. And when they say that there's not a need because money gets left in these pools of money, that is absolutely 100% not true. The money remains in the pool because the rules are not clear, and you know, we're going as fast as we can, but sometimes just can't make it happen. I do have it in writing that they misinterpreted the rules. They sent an email saying that, you know, and the AOE is doing the best they can, the state's doing the best they can, Efficiency Vermont is doing the best they can, but they did send kind of an apology email saying, you know, we're sorry, we thought you had more time to get this stuff done, but it turns out December 15th. Sorry if you didn't. But we will do our best, and I'm confident that we can make something work. I just wanted to make you aware that this is why we're being as cautious as we are with our spending, because until the money hits the bank, nothing is guaranteed as far as COVID money.
Okay, I believe that's it for Facilities Task Force. So next up under other business is the board goals updates.
Well, I can start and then anybody else can chime in. We have wonderful ideas, and we're going to be talking to you about them probably after the holidays. Okay, I mean, I think we're having a hard time making it get together. That's my update. How about everybody else? You may be doing things I don't know about.
I think Terry covered it.
Okay, nothing else to add. We can move. Oh, Joanne, I just see you unmuted.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to, yeah, I guess piggyback on that too. But I think one thing I would like to mention, since I'm unmuted and I just do this once, usually during the meeting. So to kind of touch back on the budget and communicating to the public or the community, we had talked about possibly doing like maybe question and answers. I mean, I know we keep, and again, I'm new. I love saying this, so I'm gonna keep going with it until March when I can't say it anymore. But so we're going on to draft 5. When does it stop? And when can we like really, start presenting? Because again, we're going to go back to, we can't really have the real town meeting. So we're going back to the, these ballots that need to be mailed out. Like I do have questions, and I'm sure the community is going to have questions. So do we just plan on meeting like every single week in the month of January? Like what happens? What does January look like for us? I know Dawn says not to go to the Bahamas. That's okay. I'll cancel my trip. What does January look like?
Well, last January, I think I had 13 meetings in the month of January between regular meetings, budget meetings, and every other thing under the sun. But generally, yes, January is very budget orientated. All the meetings are budget orientated. And then once we finalize is when we really get aggressive about marketing to everyone else, all of our taxpayers.
So we want your questions now. We don't, just as Dawn was asking questions, what we really want from the board is we want to make sure that our expenditure increase that we're showing you, that is the result of the work of all of the principals and their teachers to prioritize what they believe is important. That's what you're seeing. And Laura's making tweaks from week to week, board meeting to board meeting. But essentially what you have in front of you are all of our teachers and all of our positions and maintenance cycles, et cetera, that we need to run our schools. So we do want to hear from the board that, keeping it below 2, which is, 2%, that's just the expenditure increase. It has nothing to do with the actual tax rate increase. Well, it has something to do with it, but it's not all of it. We want to make sure that we are in a direction that you're approving of. And if you do have questions about what things mean, we'd love for you to either, call Laura and ask some specific questions is probably the best way. If you have a lot of questions, I know that she'll be happy to answer those. And if they're instructional in nature, if she can't answer them, I'll be able to answer them together. But in after we adopt as a board, I say you adopt it, and we adopt the language for the ballots that will go, excuse me. Then we really are going to start with presentations to the community, hopefully having some town hall style meetings where people can ask questions. And obviously, by statute, we have to have a meeting that is our formal board, presentation so many days before the budget vote. So that is the formal one, but we want to be doing some informal presenting of the budget in pieces, making it real for people. What goes into this section of a budget. And we've been talking about that over the past month.
So if I can just comment, I wasn't going to comment, but Joanne raised the issue. So what would this budget look like? I think, 2%, in some ways we feel good about it, other ways we're probably nervous. To cut 1% is how many $1,000? 750? Or am I way off? No, I'm way off. $37 million budget.
1% would be 370,000.
370,000, right? So, I mean,
sorry, I was muted and talking.
$370,000. Where would that go? It would eliminate anything new and even cut some of the current, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It would be pretty deep.
And just for, not to say that we shouldn't scrutinize the budget or that that's not a bad, that's a bad proposal, but just for Joanne's information, when we take all of these other factors into account to calculate the tax rate, so we take into account the revenues and then we create a net ed spending calculation and then we divide that by equalized pupils and we get a spending per equalized pupil and a CLA adjustment after that by town. Sometimes when you cut that, you know, that 1% or that $300,000, which sounds like a lot, the impact to your tax rate that you actually have that actually gets accomplished is extremely minimal. And that's the discussions that we'll have in January as well. Not to say it's not important, but I just, we do work through that process and say, okay, you know, based on the revenues and all these other factors, here's what happens based on the expenditures that we're proposing. And if we change that at all, here's the impact that it actually has on the tax rate that people see. So that happens.
So equalized pupils really what drives this train, right?
Yes.
And the yield that's set by the state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terry.
Thank you. You know, I'm just, what I took away from that, Joanne, and perhaps I'm on the wrong track here. What I took away from that was you were wondering, when do we start getting input or, you know, going out and communicating with the community? And do we only go when it's a done deal? And we did have some conversations earlier about that. And I know with the survey that Julie put out there, that was really helpful. And so I think that this is what I want us to discuss on our next meeting that we all have in terms of the communication. Remember, we talked about it at a board meeting in terms of what would be the best way. So before we even get, you know, I know we have to get into the best way to present it once we want people to buy in, but we're also talking about how do we make sure that we're really clear that we've got the best budget and that we've all bought into it ourselves. Is that kind of where you were going, or do you really want the mechanics of how we come up with the exact tax rate based on what?
No, not yet. I think it was more the vehicle that's going to drive the communication, I guess, to the, that's where I was kind of starting. Like, what are we going to use to reach out to the community? You know, I know I did go last year at the end of February. That's when, you know, the board got together and presented, you know, the budget that would be voted on town meeting. So that was, you know, really interesting. And obviously we're not going to have that this year. So how do we work up to that so that the questions come early enough? Like, we can't wait until the last week of February to, you know, put out that call or the newspaper article or whatever it is that we want to use, you know, because it's just, everything just seems so much slower, you know, with our means of communicating and then having the public be able to reach back out to us instead of being able to all sit together and have the conversation.
But I think that's what we're going to be talking about in our task force meeting.
Right.
Okay, good.
And then even just in a normal year, or even given this year, usually the last week or two of January, all of February, and even a little bit of March right before town meeting day, that's all time to educate the public on what the components of the budget are. That's in a normal year, and that obviously it'll be really important this year because, like you said, communication is much slower due to, you know, having to do it via Zoom meetings and whatnot. And also, don't feel bashful. If you got a question throughout the meeting, raise your hand. I try to watch for anybody. I know some people are more outspoken than others, and everybody has a different style, and that's fine. But if you have a question, don't feel like you're putting us out by asking. So that goes for anybody. And if I miss you, yell at me. That's fine.
Joanne, Julie, and I have been having a lot of discussions. We're planning on meeting with Robert this week around how we can, you know, create these videos, these little snippets to put on social media and the websites. What's the best kind of system or application to use to do that. So we're having a lot of discussions here what the article in the paper might look like, so we can bring that to you as a proposal when, you know, so we are working on a lot of ideas here too as well, on top of the town hall and things that you guys might be discussing as well for board consideration.
Peter.
I think Julie had brought up in a previous meeting having like breakout meetings, maybe concentrated on a certain town or each town, I should say. I know last year we had that meeting right before town meeting in Franklin, and I think they did the same thing in Highgate, and I know it was well received in Franklin. But I was just wondering, because I thought Julie had said something about that. I was just wondering what her thoughts were.
Yeah, I think it might help us, you know, once there's an adopted budget, it might really help us to do some smaller, you know, open house kind of uh, question and answers from your local, you know, board members and have, and by local, I don't mean that it wouldn't just be just Franklin or just Swanton or just Highgate board members, but allow people, you know, do a mini presentation and really just have more of a dialogue and what are your questions and what are your worries. And I think that then helps because as much as we market, I don't know how much we'll get, you know, a room full of people virtually to the formal budget presentation. And so I think we need to take smaller bites out of the apple. I feel like I'm using that analogy a lot right now, but I think we're going to have to start doing that just because people are busy. They don't have the attention span, honestly, to spend 2 hours listening to us go on about one line item after another. And if we can break things up or we can do topic based or you know, try and get a certain town to come to a certain event, I think that might help us drum up, get the word out.
I think that's a really good idea because we've got all the schools together now, and somebody may want to go and just have a specific question about the school that their child is in, or want to know what's going on in that specific school, and it's just too overwhelming to have this big meeting that's covering the whole thing. So I think that may be something to at least look at or pursue is you know what's going on in the Highgate Elementary School and have a meeting just on, you know, I mean, obviously you can ask any questions, you know, we'd be open for anything, but you know, this meeting concentrates on what's going on in this school. Just an idea.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, we will move on to the last item in other business, which is COVID updates.
Well, we've had a lot. As you know, and we talked about at the top, so I won't redo it. We have had cases in Swanton as well as in Franklin. We certainly have individuals in all of our schools that are out being tested, and we await test results. That happens all the time. It's been happening since August and September. I can't say enough. Dina was so kind, as was Joyce. But our nurses and our principals and the support staff that have been assisting them have been amazing. The Department of Health has been great, but the dedication of our nurses in doing the pre-work, making sure they interview individuals ahead of time so they know where people were. The Justina and her lists of that she logs all the time of who's been in what space and when and for how long, and the fact that folks have that at their fingertips so that we can make these difficult decisions and we can talk through how long people were in spaces and all of that goes into this very close consultation with the Department of Health. It's been tremendous. And once you get that positive case, it's a drop everything and spend the next 4 or 5 hours or 6 hours or however long it is getting it done. So I just can't thank them enough. I do want to make sure and point out, I know that a lot of people are concerned about schools being open when there's more COVID in our county and in the state of Vermont generally. As a state, we are in a very good place. We are still, while cases are higher than we would like them to be, the Department of Health feels pretty good about where we are. Schools being open is still the safest place for children and for staff to be. We are still seeing our cases being a fraction of the percent that's in our general community. So we knew it was going to happen. Schools are not immune. They don't have little bubbles around them, as hard as we try to create a bubble around them. But it's still, I know it's very anxiety provoking for our families. But we are trying to do everything we can to make sure that schools are open for learning and in-person learning as much as possible. Having said that, I know that there are a lot of people that are talking about after the holiday break and what that might look like. We are very cognizant of that. There is a significant tension between wanting schools to be open and ensuring that we have the staff to run school after the break, that we have the students that will be coming after the break that will be in attendance so that we have enough students to call it a school day. And we also want to make sure that we are encouraging families and encouraging staff to follow the governor's executive orders. We do not want to do anything that encourages anyone to engage in activities that will increase the rate of COVID in our community and having a longer term impact on our school. I know that I expect that over this holiday break, I could potentially be spending Christmas on the phone with the Department of Health. Depending on if somebody has a negative test that comes back on a certain day and we have to look back so many days during an infectious period. So it could very well happen. We could be looking at those things through the holiday. So all of those things are really last minute that will be affecting our staffing potentially for the Monday after New Year. We also, as superintendents, understand that the governor, he sort of let us know that by Friday he may be clarifying what he means by a holiday gathering or a gathering. And I hope I'm not on the phone at Christmas too, but you know, it's possible. We want to make sure that we let families know what we might do. We're going to make sure that devices go home with children, that teachers are prepared that there's a possibility that we have to be remote after, but we don't want to do anything too prematurely, especially since the governor may very well say, you know, or redefine what a gathering is so that it might impact how many people feel that they need to quarantine or not quarantine, or they can adjust their plans accordingly. And just as last Thanksgiving, we had made decisions when we made a plan, and then the governor had a press conference, and then we had to react to it. Timing is everything. Timing is everything. So the administrative team and I will be talking about this again tomorrow. We're going to stay tuned on Friday to see if the governor throws any curveballs or puts scaffolding up for us. I don't know. We got lots of metaphors we could use depending on what he says. But we will then have some time and we'll notify families and staff of any plans that we might have in time before kids go to break, because I believe that we at least need to have some sort of plan, even if it's a maybe, right? But I also don't want it. any decision we make has to be based on data and not based on worries or what ifs. So that's where we are right now. I know it's not very solid, but nothing very solid right now. I don't know if there are any other questions about anything that's happened over the last couple of weeks. It's been a busy couple of weeks.
Not seeing any hands raised, so thank you for the update. And good luck, and I really, truly hope you're not on the phone at Christmas. Okay, so next up is our future meeting dates. Our next meeting is January 5th, 2021. And I don't believe we have a need for executive session. So unless somebody has something to add, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Chris?
Don?
Chris, I just wanted to say, maybe to you and Peter and Laura, if something comes up with EEI that she needs to, she shouldn't hesitate, even though I'm sure we're all going to be busy with the holidays. If she needed us for an hour, I personally want to feel comfortable letting us know.
I did just send you an invite for another facility task force meeting to meet prior to the next budget draft. I proposed January. So check your emails and let me know, please.
All right, I'll watch my email. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Okay, so we had Peter as a first for adjourning. Do we have a second? Terry, any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of adjourning at 8:47, raise your hand. Motion carried 7-0. And Don said, he didn't raise his hand, he said aye. So motion carries 7-0 because Steve and Megan had to put their kids to bed.
Have a good holiday, everybody.
You as well. Have a good night. Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays,
happy
everyone.
holidays.
Night.
Happy holiday,
Bye.
everybody.